Welcome back to Forbidden Fruit. I'm your host, Ariel, and today we are going over chapters 5 and 6 of Nice Girls. Our episode theme is food and feeding, and we are lucky enough to have our first special guest, Birdy, to talk to us about speculative ecological relations. Before I jump into this, I want to apologize to the 4 of you who are here presumably because you expected Ramona. This show is her brainchild, and I hadn't exactly agreed to be her co-host when you heard about it. When she's back, she'll take over hosting, and you'll get to have your friend group book club. For now, I hope I'm carrying on the spirit of it while the search is going on. Anyway, Chapter 5. Quote, "While it's tempting to try to resume your normal social activities with still living friends, you must understand that some people will have difficulty adjusting to your new condition. Warning signs that loved ones may be planning to stake you include a sudden interest in carpentry and staring at your chest to gauge where your heart is located." From the Guide for the Newly Undead. This chapter begins with some great physical comedy, something I didn't realize we could get from books, let alone adult books. Jane runs over to Zeb's house, presumably to check on him. My notes here say that Zeb lives like a college boy, which, if you know, you know, and if you don't, you truly are blessed. She finds that he's been taking care of her precious dog, Fitz. At first, she's worried that Fitz won't like her because he's suspicious of her because she smells different. And here, she explains that he's a bit of a stupid gentle giant, a droopy-looking dog who loves and trusts everyone, but has a big bark, which made her feel safe in life. But he eventually recognizes her with gusto. Aw, just a girl and her dog. This is the beginning of the physical comedy. Ms. Harper has a way of making her prose both breezy and evocative, so she doesn't linger too long on details, but you definitely feel exactly what she's going for. However, the real bit comes when Zeb comes charging out of the house, covered in crosses of all kinds, and full-on stabs her in the chest. She notes that it feels more like a bee sting than getting shot, but she's fine. She pulls the knife out and throws it, but because she has a dog, he goes and fetches it, which prompts Zeb to stab her again, this time in the leg. It's pretty clearly established that Zeb not only lives like a college boy, but thinks like one, because he's just stabbing her to see what happens. He knows she's a vampire. Gabriel did indeed give him memories that were stupid, and he solved the riddle in like half a minute as soon as he woke up. Side note, this kind of establishes that this is not a story about the inherent pain of that cost-benefit analysis. Should I stay or should I go? Fearing that you might hurt something precious to you. Fearing that inherent loss that will happen regardless of what choices you both make. I'll come back to this later, but there's no real conflict here. Her best friend knows about her transformation the day she wakes up. Vampires are out to the world, albeit in a secretive, I'm still afraid you'll hate crime me kind of way. Their heart-to-heart is so extremely every platonic relationship in fanfic circa 2008, it makes me cringe all the way down into the depths of my liver. So I won't bother to read any of it aloud, but I won't lie, that's a little endearing in itself. The fact that I'm now suspecting Ms. Harper may have humiliating fanfiction.net notifications going to an old email, but this is its own world with its own characters existing inside it, is pretty neat. The ultimate point here is that as dated as it is, Zeb is a good best friend, even if he's not perfect. We get some interesting and hilarious world building after Jane and Zeb settle down. They may be adults with their shit largely together, but I think deep down we all have a little gremlin in us. And of course, when Zeb suggests they test the limits of Jane's undeadness, she readily agrees. He hits her with his car, she jumps off her roof, she even gets in the bath with a toaster. Nothing doing, thankfully. I think that this should have been the part where we find out how vampires work, instead of the lore dump in Chapter 2. Since Zeb is so quick to jump to the right conclusion, and they do tests on the page, it's easy to world build more naturally here. Oh well. It's still pretty funny, especially the part where Jane narrates, quote, "When we were kids, Mama used to ask, if Zeb wanted to jump off the roof, would you do it too? And as it turned out, the answer was yes," end quote. The aforementioned roof jump is a good place for Jane to describe her house, River Oaks. We get my dreaded Civil War mention, but it's thankfully in the context of it was an old house that Aunt Jetty took off the Civil War architecture tour, so Civil War buffs couldn't come and gawk at it because that's weird. So it's fine, I guess. I just think the South has more to offer. And Ms. Harper agrees, thankfully. Half Moon Hollow is so lovingly built, from the houses to the local culture. It has good and bad. And yeah, I'm definitely the kind of girl who likes a good solid world for the character to grow in. The majority of Chapter 5 is just Jane and Zeb fucking around testing out her limits, so it isn't the most exciting chapter, but it once again reminds us that Jane collects useless trivia, and that she's a voracious reader. Chapter 6's quote is a little less ominous. New vampires are discouraged from trying to return to their normal human routines, especially if those routines include tanning or working as a fireman. Your day will not end well. From the Guide for the Newly Undead. Not ominous, but it's a little upsetting. If I couldn't go outside and spend time in the sun, I'd probably want to jump off a roof too. So Jane, faced with an eternity of nights and unemployment she can't easily remedy, realizes how much boredom she's about to be hit with, and does the very human thing. She makes herself busy. She rearranges her furniture, cleans, paints her toenails. Her narration here says, quote, "I kept my fingernails short and naked for typing and shelving, but my toes were treated to an ever-changing rainbow of polishes. A woman puts on a new dress, eyeliner, lip gloss to please others. A woman paints her toes to please herself. And if there was one thing I was familiar with, it was pleasing." There's no way to finish that sentence without embarrassing myself. End quote. I don't entirely agree regarding makeup and dressing nice, to be honest. I use my version of finery to make myself feel nice, and if it's attractive to other people, that's a bonus, not the goal. But I gotta give Jane a pass here, because she's a woman speaking to women about her opinions on herself, and also I really like the way it was worded. I'm a sucker for dirty jokes, I guess. After all of that, there's nothing left for her to do. She remarks that she's afraid to try out the nightlife. Vampire clubs are far away and uncomfortable. She doesn't know any other vampires except Gabriel and Missy. She's afraid she'll be offensive and end up staked because she doesn't know proper vampire etiquette. This is so true to life. When you first come out to yourself, or maybe one other person, the idea of taking the plunge and entering the scene is so intimidating. How can you fit in when you barely even fit in your own skin? Ms. Harper barely spends 2 paragraphs on that, but it resonates. Anyway, Jane eventually just goes to Walmart, prompting a scene that I thought of early on when I mentioned a better way to world build. At Walmart, Jane has trouble navigating the special dietary needs aisle, which is incredible. I'm starting to understand, though, why we get lore dumps. It's established that Jane is a trivia dispenser, and her eyes are just the coin slots. She jumps off the roof, we get a history lesson about the house. She goes to the specialty aisle, we get a lore dump about Half Moon Hollow's cultural acceptance level for vampires, because she's never ventured down it before. We learn that the Hollow is not accepting as a whole. I'm gonna read this passage in full because it's hair-raising. Now, for the first time, I was afraid of seeing my neighbors, my family. It was only a matter of time before they found out about me. I couldn't survive on sunscreen and my wits, such as they were. In a Half Moon Hollow, vampires still occasionally died in accidental fires or falls on handy wooden objects. That's why few local vampires had come out of the coffin, so to speak. people stopped talking when the new vampire's parents walked into the room. Their families were frozen out of their churches, their clubs, friends stopped calling, and eventually, the vampire even left town or succumbed to injuries sustained during a tragic drapery malfunction. But I wasn't going to leave the hollow. I didn't care if Grandma Ruthie got kicked out of her bridge club. I didn't care if I got funny looks at the grocery store. I wasn't leaving my home, the only place I knew. I could only hope my friends and neighbors were rational enough not to go the pitchfork and torch route. But even if they did, I was pretty sure I could outrun them. See, the rules in this universe are that vampires do drink blood to live, but not any more at a time than you'd lose if you were donating blood. And vampires may be supernaturally hot as fuck to attract prey. They might be monsters, but they're not monstrous unless they choose to be. And if any person can kill a vampire with smarts and some household items, that gives these vampires some unique vulnerabilities that I think work well here. Vampirism might as well be a chronic illness, as established in Chapter 2 with Arnie Frink's lawsuit against his employers violating the ADA. It's an interesting angle to come at this, but again, if we are modernizing the metaphor, we need to be careful of what we're representing and how. If Ms. Harper's vampires are an explicit queer metaphor, it's nice to see that back in 2009, someone was coming at it this kind of slantwise. Vampires are other. There's no getting around it, but seen as monsters while having a distinct lack of monstrousness. Also, I'm not sure what flavor of rainbow capitalism this would be. Gothic capitalism, maybe? But it's also a delight, not so much to see as much as to see the attention to detail from Ms. Harper. As long as need exists, there will be corporations ready and willing to wrap exploitation in an embarrassing and gaudy package. Not to get political, I'm just pointing out what Jane notices with her eyeballs. Since she doesn't really know what she's doing, she ends up following around a pretty vampire who looks like she could act in, quote, a non-threatening shampoo commercial, end quote, and just picking out the same things this woman does because she looks like she really has her shit together. Relatable. The first time I was told I was ruining my hair with the stuff my foster sister was using, I got totally overwhelmed at the store and stood there for half an hour under the god-awful fluorescence, unable to read the labels and wondering if maybe I should just shave it all off. Anyway, Jane takes her purchases to the front and has another moment of fear. She likens it to the time she went and bought her own condoms and the feeling she had that no matter what else she put in the basket, the cashier would see it and know. And it's a small town, so the math is simple. Fortunately for Jane, it's also the middle of the night. And if you've ever had to shop at Walmart in the middle of the night, you know everyone is so checked out, you could walk around in full 12th century troubadour cosplay and they wouldn't notice. She ends up being fine. When she gets home, though, there's someone waiting for her, and we're introduced to someone I really hope is a recurring character. Her name is Andrea, and Andrea is a redheaded goddess who belongs aesthetically in a time with high-waisted gowns, and nobody ever said Jane was a poet, she just reads poetry. Andrea is also a voluntary private blood donor sent over by Gabriel, who wants Jane to feel comfortable feeding from people who aren't him. Andrea is an experienced human who does this for a lot of newly turned vampires, and all of the language in this is sexually charged. Jane even comments on it, like, this is all making her uncomfortable. It's new, and she feels like Gabriel sort of pushed another boundary she didn't even know was there by sending Andrea over. On the other hand, she's a polite woman who really shouldn't turn down a free meal and doesn't want to offend this stunning woman on her porch, so she tries to make the best of it. Once again, Ms. Harper writes briefly and breezily, aiming to capture the feeling rather than write down every detail. Despite the clinical, transactional nature of it, the whole thing does feel more like a sexual encounter than a meal, which, like, duh, girls drinking blood, tale as old as time. And even though Andrea enjoys it, Jane has a lot of feelings about it that aren't so positive. Andrea leaves her card with Jane, who tries at first to politely say that she doesn't want to see Andrea again, but she kind of fumbles the ball and hurts Andrea's feelings. What I like about this here is that even though it's a painful interaction that sort of ends on a sour note, they're both adults about it. Andrea has enough grace to just put her card on the rail and leave with a smile, and Jane has enough self-awareness afterward to clock that she was kind of a dick and made Andrea feel cheap. Honestly, kudos. It's not easy to admit when you're the one who's misstepped, especially since Jane spent such a long time worrying that she'd offend someone by breaking some vampire social norm. Andrea is so cool. I think she and Jane should date. It won't happen, but even so, I really do hope she's part of the cast and not just a throwaway character. Anyway, so Jane gets a little heated after thinking about Andrea, not in the fun way, but she does that thing where she thinks about something and the more she thinks about it, the worse it gets. And what she's thinking about is how Gabriel's treating her like a child and trying to take care of her instead of trusting her to be the adult that she is. There's a guide. There's the internet, as unreliable as it is. There's Walmart. He doesn't need to do things like send over the 2009 vampire version of DoorDash without even asking Jane if she wants it. So the chapter ends with Jane deciding to go confront Gabriel on this behavior. And we don't get any further than Gabriel opening the door to her. I wanted to go back to what I was saying earlier. This isn't your traditional vampire story about the fear and tragedy. There's not much of a power imbalance here either. This isn't a yearning fantasy, or one where the tension is in the question of whether he can hold back his impulses, the whole Beauty and the Beast vibe. He's technically her sire, yeah, but it doesn't feel weird because they didn't know each other first. They're on equal footing. And I think that's because this is actually a celebration of the other. Ms. Harper hasn't been subtle, because that isn't the point. Jane will have opportunities in death that she never had in life. Being a vampire will open doors for her, not just in terms of self-exploration, but socially too. I think that this is probably, at least in part, a story about how coming to terms with your otherness actually makes your life better. In fact, I'm not even sure it's a deconstruction of the genre. It has all the groundwork for a deconstruction. That is, it establishes the tropes of the genre as convention of the world Jane lives in, and strives to take them seriously to interact with the sort of meta-commentary that provides. But at the same time, it's a balls-to-the-wall dark comedy, whose protagonist isn't so much genre-savvy as just a resident of a world, and we are in her head, so we have an extremely unreliable narration to contend with as well. I genuinely like this better. It's earnest. There is value in deconstruction, let me be clear. I actually really like it when it's done well. There's room for satire and parody, too, which it turns out this isn't. But there's a point at which you're so far up your own ass, so submerged in meta-commentary, that you just become the thing you're trying to satirize. And that can be okay too. Like, for example, I don't think anybody would come away from Leslie Vernon thinking, wow, I can't believe they accidentally took it that far. That was on purpose. And it was a fun time that nobody took too seriously. The whole movie is a joke, not just the first part. The first part tells you how to read the last part. The meta-commentary is the setup. The punchline is that there's no twist ending. Everybody gets what they came here for. Ms. Harper is definitely in the became the thing itself camp, but I think it's on purpose, and she's enjoying every second of it. As long as you know what you're writing, it's fine. It's still very effective. This is, after all, a comedy. We have a lot more room here to move, even if it's a comedy on the darker side. Maybe especially because it's on the darker side. Intentionality is what makes it, I think. And, sometimes it's just a swing and a miss, or sometimes, you know what? It just isn't for you. Nice Girls is what vampires suck tried and failed to be, in my opinion. But it isn't wrong if someone says Vampires Suck is effective and Nice Girls is just another vampire romance. I should note here there is crossover but not direct equivalence between, say, deconstruction and parody, but in this case Vampires Suck tried to be both and in my opinion failed to be neither because it wasn't funny and it learned nothing. I wouldn't fault anyone though for disagreeing because humor is subjective, and sometimes I too would rather sit down and watch a popcorn flick than spend hours and hours reading a book, because my brain is fucked and my eyes don't always process letters and words in the order they're supposed to. When God was handing out dumb bitch juice, I snuck back in line for a second helping, but I make up for it by being so dry people think I'm being funny. Anyway, I guess the ultimate point here is that Ms. Harper's just telling an earnest story, if a darkly funny one, about being able to reach higher once you embrace the things about yourself that are different. I'll come back and eat my words if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm only seeing what I want to see. We are, after all, just finished with chapter 6. Thus ends the chapter review for this episode. This month, as I said, we have a special guest, which is exciting. It's also convenient because I'm still laid up and not in a place to do much besides work and sleep and maybe replay the Witcher games while I'm elevating my leg after work. I had to pre-record this interview because I knew I was gonna have major surgery at the end of last month, but I wasn't sure how bad the recovery was gonna be, so the timing is off. The guest and I spoke before I even read chapter 4. They took it like a champ though, and they're real smart, so I think their expertise is worth the slightly weird timing. The idea for special guests is to set a topic, or at least the idea of a topic, and let the guest go down that road, while I listen and either ask questions or participate to move their ideas forward. It's a pleasure and a genuine privilege to be able to listen to people speak about things they enjoy or things they're knowledgeable about. And I made sure to find future guests who either specialize in things that could fit into my planned topics or are passionate about topics I plan to talk about in the future. For today's interview, I didn't do much editing aside from removing egregious dead air or anytime my stutter became too annoying. Otherwise, this is our interview largely intact because Birdy is a fucking star. And we now have Birdy with us to talk about food in a supernatural world. Would monsters fight over resources? Would they share? How would this world provide for them? Let's get their thoughts.
Hi everyone. Just to introduce myself, I am Birdy. We kind of met each other online through kind of weird internet spaces, and I was offered a chance to be on the podcast, and now here I am. So, hello. I am a biologist kind of in my civilian life, I guess, so I'm interested generally in beasts and creatures, just in full generality, and so monsters are something that I think about a lot. The supernatural is something I think about, and I do wonder about, what would vampires be like in real life? What would werewolves be like in real life? How would that work on a biological level? So that's definitely something I'm curious about. And I've been told that the topic of the episode is food and feeding and kind of basically ecological relations is how I would think of it, is who eats who and when and why. So I think that this is yeah. Sorry, I kind of just monologued there for a second.
No, that's perfect. Keep going.
Yeah, so I think this question is interesting for vampires especially, and the topic of the podcast is sort of vampires, right? It's a vampire book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is interesting for vampires because vampires are not per se predators, they're parasites. And whether they're parasites or parasitoids, I think varies by kind of telling and by vampire variant. So a parasite is a creature that gets its nutrition by exploitation of other creatures, by taking physical resources from other creatures, not by predating them directly and killing them and eating them, but by by stealing from them or taking their blood, as vampires do, or so on. So a parasite is a parasite that takes resources from another animal while leaving it alive, but a parasitoid kills its host. So some vampires are parasitoids. They can only eat while killing the humans that they feed from, and a lot of kind of more modern vampires, I'd say, and especially like sympathetic vampires, get to be parasites, and they get to be able to take blood without killing anybody.
Yeah, that's what these ones are. Mm-hmm. They're very sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. That's it's a romance novel kind of vampirism, right?
Yeah, I mean it's also a comedy. Dark comedy, but it's very funny. Very queer-coded vampires, on purpose,
fun.
I think.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting topic. Like, you said that it's a comedy, so I don't know if it goes in this direction, but like, blood and the contamination of blood, like the interactions with blood and blood contamination would kind of be an interesting way to go with queer-coded vampires specifically, because of, the relationship of the gay community to bloodborne illness, but that would be not a comedic story, I think.
No, I did read one when I was very young. I don't remember what it was called, but it was written by an author who was also very young, and actually being fed on by a vampire cured the illness that the bloodborne illness that the kid had. So I think it's very interesting how how individual authors interact with these ideas.
That's interesting.
I will write down the name of the book if I remember it.
Yeah, I'd love to check it out.
It was interesting, and that was also, it felt very queer to me, even as a young person still in the closet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to check it out if you remember the title.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but like on the subject of blood and blood feeding and blood kind of parasitism, there are animals in real life who are obligate feed on blood and nothing else. Like vampire bats are obviously the most kind of salient ones, and vampires a lot of times are associated with bats because of vampire bats. But there are other animals mosquitoes, lots of different kinds of biting flies. With mosquitoes, it's actually interesting because only the females feed on blood. And they only do it when they're getting ready to produce eggs. So when they need a lot of protein so that they can lay their eggs, is the only time that they feed on blood. And then the rest of the time, mosquitoes actually feed on pollen, and the males only feed on pollen. So, she's just trying to. When you slap a mosquito, she's just trying to get by. She's just trying to put her children into this world. So I always feel a little bit bad about slapping mosquitoes, but that's just how it is. Parasites and hosts are kind of in this eternal kind of evolutionary war.
That's interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, don't know this. people think of mosquitoes as just this evil force that exists to inconvenience you. But they're real animals, and they, have a life cycle and have certain biological drives and constraints that leads them to behave in the way that they do. And it would be kind of fun if vampires were similar. Vampires, I think, are supernatural, so they don't have to worry about nutrition as much. I think with vampires, it's not so much about blood. The blood is symbolizing, life force or, kind of vitality, humanness even, rather than, it being actual physical blood. Mm-hmm. Which I think works out better for the vampires because blood is not a good source of nutrition. Blood is very nutrition poor. It's mostly water. Blood is mostly water. There's some protein in it, which is why mosquitoes need it to lay their eggs, like I said. But it's mostly, there's just not a lot of stuff in blood. It's mostly just water. So vampire bats, who eat only blood, of course, have to feed, like, basically continuously, like, from the entire night, like, the entire time they're awake. They have to be taking blood meals, like, with very, very, very frequently. And this is part of the, I think this is why, this is speculated to be why they're flying creatures, and why very few, like, most creatures that subsist on blood fly, because it's a very quick way to get around and to get between hosts as quickly as possible. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get enough blood to survive. Like, you have to be moving from host to host, like, as fast as you possibly can to get your nutritional needs met. And that's not something I've ever seen, like, a vampire story kind of be interested in. And I think that's something I feel like you could either play for comedy or horror. Like, you could do it as a thing of, like, man, like, I have to keep moving the entire night and, like, just drink all these people, as many people as I possibly can, even the ones, like, that are ugly. Like, I don't have enough time to, like, you know, have, like, a sensual, like, queer-coded vampire moment with everybody. I just need to get on the move and, like, you know, drink from a bunch of, like, dudes in a bar, you know? Or, like, you could play it as horror and be like, you know, this sense of this idea of a hunger that's never sated that you see come up, like, in some vampire stories. I think that would be an interesting, like, biological way to play on that.
I think, you know, some of the older vampire stories definitely touch on that, but I don't know if they know they're touching on it.
Yeah.
They just do.
Yeah, well, because, like, the intrinsic horror of a vampire is, like, having to do something terrible to survive and having, like, a urge that you can't escape is, like, the horror part of it. So yeah, and you could, it makes me think of certain, like, Algonquin and Native American myths around cannibalism, where there's myths about if you eat human flesh, like, even in times of starvation, it, like, turns you into a monster, and you from then after crave human flesh. Like, I think that those are not necessarily, like, they didn't come from, like, the same, like, place, like in terms of they didn't come from the same place historically, but they came from, I think, the same kind of, like, very deep human fear, like, you know, like, what if you want something that's bad, and, like, what if you can't get away from it?
Yeah, I think no matter where you come from, there is a shared sort of, like you said, deep fear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there are very many people who haven't asked that question, you know, like, what if my body betrays me?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's also, like, you know, one of the intrinsic horrors is of starvation, of, like, not being able to sustain yourself anymore.
Especially if you've, you know, been starving before.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you've dealt with, like, speaking about this, I'm thinking about, like, in terms of addiction. Like, your body needs needs something, and then that need takes over. Like, it's something that you're giving it that you didn't necessarily, like, physically need before, but you damn well need it now, and, like, you'll die if you don't get it. So those are ways that you could go in, like, horror vampire versions, like, you know, the horror of starvation, the horror of addiction.
Yeah, definitely. That is a good way to approach it. Not in a comedy.
Not in a comedy.
But
not in a comedy.
Definitely in a horror.
Yeah. I was gonna say something more lighthearted that I know about vampire bats, that would also be an issue with vampires, that I don't think any vampire media would ever touch with a 10-foot pole. Like I said, blood is mostly water, so vampire bats are just peeing continuously, just all the time. They have to get rid of all the excess water so that they can still fly, because otherwise they'll be too heavy. They're like little water balloons. So they're just peeing just all the time.
No, I've never seen that before. I mean, granted, I've never read all the vampire-associated media ever, but I haven't seen it before.
Well, I mean, it's like, it wouldn't be very romantic, would it? I mean, unless you're, like, into that, but then you would have to, like, kind of frame the story around that, you know?
Yeah, that would be a very niche sort of.
It would be a very, it would be a very
story.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, from what I understand, I'm not so much of like a romance novel guy, but like my understanding is that like whatever you put out there on the internet or like on the Amazon like Kindle market, like you're gonna get a few bites. Like there's gonna be somebody out there who's like, yes, this is exactly like my specific king. Thank you for writing this. Just because of like the law of large numbers. But that's gonna be like 5 people. I'm sorry
Yeah, definitely. That's not
I'm sorry to any listeners if I like accidentally like if you listen to this and you're like, well, that's actually super hot. I'm sorry.
That's one of the 5.
One of the 5. If you are one of the 5 and you are out there, shine on, you crazy diamond. I respect you immensely. Oh, what else?
So I had a question for you.
Yeah.
And this is just sort of a what if. But so there's a lot of after, you know, maybe 2000. When did Twilight come out? It was like,
oh man,
2000 something.
Yeah, I was like in high school, in middle school. So this would have been like 2012-ish, I think.
I think it was before that. I think it was like 2008.
Yeah, 2008 or 2009 also. That sounds more correct.
But after that, there was a sort of a spate of books that had vampires and werewolves in it, and love triangles. And I had a thought. You know, in a world where vampires and werewolves exist or coexist, would you think that they would compete for resources? Or, like, I mean, I don't know, do werewolves eat people? I don't know. Or do they just attack them?
I have actually thought about this. I feel like it depends on the... Yeah, I feel like it depends on the needs of the werewolves and vampires in question. Like, yeah, so, like, do werewolves eat people, or do they just, like, attack, like, people randomly? I think in a situation, and, like, again, I think this would be a more horror-y setting, I think in a situation where werewolves and vampires both need to subsist off of humans, they would compete. And by subsist, I mean kill specifically. Like if werewolves and vampires are both, I guess technically would both be parasitoids and like need to feed off of humans specifically in some capacity, then I think that they would compete, because humans are a limited resource. There's a lot of us on this planet, but we reproduce very slowly. And if you have like too many predators, like you would deplete us in an area fairly quickly. So in a situation where both werewolves and vampires need to kill to feed, then I think that they would definitely be in competition with each other, because an area could only support so many like predators killing humans. But I feel like in a situation where werewolves do kill people maybe, but vampires don't, and they just need blood, then werewolves and vampires could actually work together, because you could imagine like a werewolf and a vampire like working out a deal, like, hey, like you get the flesh and I get the blood. I've never seen that, and I think that that would be a funny thing to approach in like a very black comedy. You have like a werewolf
buddy comedy.
Yeah, werewolf vampire buddy comedy where they just go kill all these people.
That is funny.
And then I think in a situation where werewolves and vampires both don't need to kill to live, I think that they have no reason to be at loggerheads with each other than like tradition. Because, you know, there's such a long history of werewolves versus vampires stories that like now like everybody kind of does it. But like I don't see like if both your werewolf and your vampire both don't need to kill human beings to live, then like I don't see why they should be enemies. Like I think that they should be friends and maybe kiss. Close the werewolf vampire love triangle that way.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that. So, I guess my next question, and this has kind of nothing to do with that, but it also does. So when a predator eats something, does it, like, is the blood necessary, or is the flesh enough to be nutritious? Because, like, we eat meat.
Yeah.
And, like, we drain the blood from the animal first.
Yes. Yeah. I think, yeah, I think the muscle, like, most, you know, when carnivores, like, kill and eat other animals, I think it's mostly the muscles and the offal that is the majority of the nutrition. I think the blood is like not like a large part of the caloric like yield there. Like I said, like blood is mostly water. There's just not a lot of protein. There's not a lot of nutrients in blood. So I think that eating the body is the more important part, which is why I think like humans drain the blood from the body of the animal and like, you know, it's fine. Like you're just going to eat the muscle anyway, so the blood doesn't matter. The pink stuff that leaks out of your steak, by the way, is not blood. This is a common misconception. It's myoglobin.
Yeah, that's myoglobin,
yes,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which has
I don't remember where I heard that, but it just stuck in my head.
Yeah, it's like one of those like factoids that like I'm not surprised when people know it, but I'm not surprised when people don't know it, you know?
Yeah.
I know about it. I know about it because I studied motor control for a tiny little bit of time, and the energy demands of muscle are a really big important part of that, and so I had to learn about the different kinds of myoglobin. I've completely forgotten all of it now, so don't ask me about myoglobin.
Okay, I won't. Yeah, no, I just wondered, because, you know, that idea of a vampire werewolf buddy comedy is actually kind of appealing now.
I think that they should share. There's no reason why they need to be enemies. Are there werewolves in the book you're reading?
I am not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are. I haven't, like, I'm trying not to read ahead. So, you know, I think so, though. Like, I feel like I heard that there are, but I can't say for sure. Yeah. No, it's the world is coming together, and it's actually very funny. But
is it like
I like it so far.
Yeah, is it like a kitchen sink sort of fantasy setting? I feel like a lot of times in like urban fantasy like kind of settings, like they just throw like every like possible like beast and creature at the wall. So it's like you've got vampires and you've got werewolves and like you've got like fairies for some reason, and like you've got like I don't know, like there's a dragon maybe, and like, you know, it's just like this, that, and the other. So is it like that kind of setting, or is it just like just vampires and werewolves, nobody else?
So as far as I know, there are definitely vampires and ghosts. And looking at the contents of the series, like if I'm looking at the titles and the descriptions, there are werewolves and I think if this is attached, also witches. There's definitely magic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
But I don't think like fairies exist unless I'm just missing something. But the Half Moon Hollow series, like there's I think there's 4, but there could be 5. This, like, vampire section is about Jane Jameson and her adventures as a vampire, and it's like the Nice Girls series. And then there's one about werewolves, and then there's another one, and I think this is about witches, and I'm not sure if it's attached, but it all takes place in the same town.
Oh, so it's like a little shared universe. Oh, that's so fun. That makes me think of, like, I feel like it's like a similar appeal to, like, I think that there was books that I like bad paperbacks that I read as like a little kid, where it was like, here is the town where all the spooky things are, and then there were like multiple like little series like coming off like one point, and it was like, here's the one about the fairies, and like here's the one about the witches, and like that kind of thing. So I feel like it's a similar appeal.
Yeah. And so I think probably if you're interested in, you know, A, B, or C, you could follow that series and not have to have the context from the other ones, which is a nice way to write it, and still have the universe that you built.
Probably good marketing too, because it's like, hey, like, go like here's your personal favorite thing.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit, maybe not the kitchen sink, but definitely a junk drawer.
Yeah, that's fair. So what else? So like in the book, like is it like it's a vampires don't need to kill kind of setting because it's a comedy?
Right. It's actually really cute. They only drink about a pint at a time and then they get full.
That is really cute. That is really cute. I have no idea how they'd meet their nutritional needs that way, but I mean, I guess vampires are dead, right? They're like not alive.
Yeah.
They're undead. That was the word I was looking for. They're undead. So presumably their metabolic like requirements are much lower, so maybe they only need a pint of blood. But yeah, that is very funny and cute.
Yeah. And like if they want to go and get hammered or whatever, they go to the bar and like ask for a special drink that has blood mixed in.
Oh, cute. I thought you were going to say they go to the bar and drink from drunk people.
That is also funny, but no. I mean, they probably could, but I don't know if like substances would transfer over. You'd think that they would.
Yeah, well, because you're, you know, it's your blood alcohol content is like the measure of how drunk you are. Like like alcohol, not every drug like shows up in the blood necessarily, but alcohol like for sure does. So like I would think that if vampires can get drunk, they would get drunk from drinking from drunk people. What a terrible phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to see if it comes up.
And in this world, they also have like
blood cocktails.
Oh, no, it's not fake blood, but it's synthetic blood. So people figured out how to make blood with the same like nutritional qualities,
yeah,
and sell it to vampires because, you know, in this world vampires are just known to people.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. I like that it's like a post masquerade setting. I always find that like I feel like we all have to hide our identities from humans. It's like there's fun stories you can tell with it, but it's definitely like kind of the default, and so like a setting that doesn't have that assumption is like kind of fun, I think.
Yeah, so like I say that they're queer coded, and I think that it's on purpose because like they're working on getting recognition for equal rights, and they're like you know, when they tell their family it's coming out of the coffin, and there's like
someone you love could be a vampire.
Exactly. And you know, like it's just very much you know, things that if you're gay or, you know, part of the community, you're like, oh
yeah,
I remember that.
That's funny. Is it set in a particular year?
I think I think Nice Girls is just 2009.
Okay, yeah. So, like...
which is when it came out.
Yeah. So, like, it was definitely, that was still, like, a very, like, live, like, cultural issue. I mean, it still is. But,
yes.
Like, much, much differently.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a werewolf and, like, you come out as a werewolf, what would that be? Coming out of the woods?
I don't know how Ms. Harper like wrote her werewolves. I don't know if it's like hereditary or if you get turned into a werewolf.
Yeah.
If it's hereditary, you probably just, I don't know, tell somebody.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like they sit you down, they instead of like sitting your parents down and being like, "Mom, Dad, I'm a vampire." You like your parents sit you down and they're like, "Son, we have something to tell you about our family."
Yeah.
Different vibe. That would be an interesting. I mean, obviously, like, we'll see how the book does it, but that would be an interesting, like, collision if, like, you can only become a vampire from another vampire, which is, like, the classic way, but you become a werewolf, like, through heredity, like, that would be an interesting, like, rather than werewolves and vampires, like, having like, a strict, like, resources clash. Maybe it's a culture clash.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I could see an interesting story about like, werewolf adoptee being like, what is wrong with me, and trying to find their like bio family to figure out like what is going on with my body.
Oh, you mean a werewolf being adopted into a human family? I was thinking about the other way around.
Oh, that would be cool too.
I think that would also be interesting. You could play that for, like, I can imagine that, like, being super played for comedy, but I could also imagine that being played for horror. Like, your family, like, do we ever truly know our families? You know what I mean? And having to deal with, being part of a larger thing that you don't understand, that you've kind of been forced into. And having to learn to, having to realize that your family, like, may not have your interests at heart, or maybe they do things that you don't morally agree with. I think that would be a great werewolf horror story if you were to tell a story about, like, either someone getting adopted into a werewolf family, or someone, like, realizing that their family is werewolves and that they also have the curse, I feel like werewolves have gotten, like, really tame, like, even to a greater extent than vampires. I feel like vampires, like, always hold, like, still a little bit of horror because of the blood meal and the, the hunger and so on, as we were discussing. But I feel like it's really easy to make werewolves, like, just, like, a guy that turns into a dog. What's so scary about that? And I would love to see, like, a resurgence of, like, actually horrifying werewolves. I just think that would be cool.
Yeah.
You can tell that I'm a horror guy much more than I am a comedy guy or a romance guy.
I am too. I love horror, and I was kind of hoping for a horror story when I picked up a vampire book, but I mean, this is good too. It's very much a dark comedy, and it's very funny, but I do love horror. So
we live in a horrifying world.
We sure do.
There's just so many things to tell stories about.
Yeah. I mean, my thought about that was like, I've had to find biological family to find out like what is going on with my body. What is this heritable disease, or do we have one? And so that's where my mind went.
That makes sense.
And, like, it would be especially horrific if, it has more of a transformation aspect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of just like horribly aching joints and you know, a rash.
I am sorry.
Transform into a wolf.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's significantly cooler, but like, is it worth the trade-off?
I
am sorry.
I don't know.
I am sorry about the horrors.
Does the transformation hurt?
Yeah, I guess that's the
question.
kicker. Yeah, I am sorry about the horrors of the flesh. By the way, having a body is bad. I don't know why we have to do it. Seems very unfair.
I know. Sign me up for the robot uprising.
So true. Do they have robots? That would be really funny if in like the urban fantasy, like supernatural romance setting, there's just also robots. I think that would be really funny.
I mean, there's probably a Roomba somewhere, but
yeah,
I don't think that they have like actual,
androids, like robots that you can talk to.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm only on chapter 3, but that would be funny, but I doubt it. I think she's firmly in the fantasy category.
Yeah, that's fair. You gotta pick your set of things that you want to write about, and don't just throw the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah. Well, I think that you had a lot of great things to say.
Thank you. I did my best.
Did you have anything else that you would like to say?
Donate to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. That is my message.
Okay. And do you have any, I don't know, projects or social media that you want to, I don't know.
I like kind of don't. I'm kind of a hermit. We just kind of, like, you and me, like, kind of met through, like, a weird back channel, because I'm only, like, really on Discord. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, you can keep an eye out for the scientific papers that I'm gonna write in the future, but they're not written yet, so I can't tell you about them, and also, you know, that's my professional identity, so my civilian identity, as I said before. So no, I don't really have anything to plug. It's all you.
All right, well, thank you for coming on. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, I had a great time.
Yeah, you have a great rest of your week.
I'll do my best. You as well.
All right.
Signing off.
That was Birdy, everyone. Another big thanks to them for carrying the weight of this episode on their learned shoulders. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.